I didn't plan it. I really didn't. But somehow, one thing led to another, and suddenly I was talking to Ethan. It all started innocently enough. Just one of those things you never expect to change your life. I was married to Jason, and things were fine, I guess. We were settled into this routine. You know the kind. The kind where the spark of a relationship gets buried beneath the weight of responsibility and time. It wasn't that I didn't love him. I did. But something had shifted. The intimacy between us had faded, and while Jason was a good man, dependable, responsible, he was also predictable. And over time, that predictability became suffocating. It was a Tuesday when I met Ethan. I had gone out to dinner with a friend of mine, someone I hadn't seen in a while. She introduced me to him, but at first, he didn't even register on my radar. He was one of those people who blended into a crowd, not particularly striking at first glance. But there was something in the way he talked, in the way he looked at me, that made me feel, I don't know, important. Maybe it was just me craving something different, something new, but when Ethan spoke to me, it felt like I was the only person in the room. We talked about music, about life. He seemed genuinely interested in me, and the more we talked, the more I realized that he had a way of making everything feel exciting. And I hadn't felt excited in so long. Jason, of course, was a great guy, but we had fallen into that trap, where everything becomes a routine. Where you know each other so well that the mysteries disappear. And, to be honest, I missed that. I missed the thrill of getting to know someone, the rush of newness. The problem was, I didn't know how to bring that up to Jason. How could I explain that I was craving something more when he was already doing everything right? I started texting Ethan after that night. Just casual stuff at first. Nothing too flirty. But there was something about our conversations that felt deeper than anything I'd shared with Jason in a while. We had this instant connection, this electric undercurrent that made every message feel charged with possibility. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it was just a way to pass the time. Nothing more. But the more we talked, the more I found myself looking forward to our conversations. The excitement, the attention, the validation. It was intoxicating. One evening, after Jason had gone to bed, I found myself texting Ethan again. "How's your day going?" I typed, my fingers almost betraying me as they hit send. His reply came quickly. "Better now that I'm hearing from you. How about you?" And from there, it was like the floodgates opened. The conversation turned more personal. It felt like he really saw me, in a way Jason didn't anymore. Ethan asked about my life, about my dreams, things I hadn't shared with anyone in years. It felt good to talk, to feel heard. He started sending me little compliments. Casual at first, but they hit me differently. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed being admired, missed feeling attractive. Jason never told me I was beautiful anymore. But Ethan did, and it made me feel like I mattered again. We began texting more often. Sometimes during the day, sometimes late at night when I couldn't sleep. I found myself looking for any excuse to check my phone. And with every message, with every compliment, I felt myself getting more and more drawn to him. It wasn't just the attention, though. Ethan had this energy about him. He was spontaneous, charming, and unpredictable. Everything I felt was missing in my life. Jason, for all his qualities, was safe. He was reliable, steady, and that's what I had once admired in him. But somewhere along the way, that steadiness had become boring. But Ethan was the opposite of boring. He was the unknown, the thrill, and I couldn't get enough of it. It was a few weeks later when Ethan asked if I wanted to meet up for coffee. By then, our texting had become more flirtatious, more intimate. But I still didn't think of it as anything serious. I thought I could just meet him, talk, and then walk away. No harm done. I didn't tell Jason. Of course, I didn't. How could I? He would never understand. I told him I was going to run some errands. A harmless excuse, one I had used 100 times before. Ethan picked the cafe, a quiet little place on the outskirts of town. It wasn't busy, and when I walked in, I saw him waiting for me at a corner table. He stood up when he saw me, giving me that smile, the one that made my heart skip a beat. "Hey," he said softly, his voice low and inviting. "I'm glad you could make it." We sat and ordered coffee, talking about everything and nothing all at once. The conversation flowed so easily, and I realized I'd never been this comfortable with someone so quickly. It was as though we had known each other for years. I wasn't sure when it happened, but somewhere during that conversation, the air shifted. There was a tension now. A palpable something between us that hadn't been there before. I could feel it in the way he looked at me. It wasn't just friendly anymore. There was desire in his gaze. You know, I've been thinking about you a lot lately, he said, almost out of nowhere. It was bold, and yet, it didn't feel wrong. I tried to play it cool, to brush it off. But the truth was, his words made something inside of me stir. It was exciting to be desired again. To be seen the way Ethan saw me, not as Jason's wife but as myself. You have? I asked. My voice a little softer than I intended. He leaned in slightly, and I could feel the heat between us. Yeah, he said, his voice dropping lower. I've been wanting to spend more time with you. Before I could respond, he smiled and added, but I'll be patient. I can wait. I laughed nervously, my heart racing. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but in that moment, it didn't matter. I wasn't thinking about Jason. I wasn't thinking about anything except the feeling of being wanted again. I didn't know it at the time, but this moment, this innocent cup of coffee, would set the wheels in motion for everything that followed. It wasn't long after that coffee date that I knew things were going to change. I couldn't get Ethan out of my head. We continued texting, our conversations growing deeper and more flirtatious by the day. He'd ask me about my life, about Jason, about everything I'd never told him before. I found myself confiding in him, telling him things I hadn't even admitted to myself. He made me feel like I mattered. Like I wasn't just someone's wife, but a person with my own thoughts, desires, and needs. Jason had no idea, of course. I made sure to keep everything hidden. It wasn't that I didn't love him. I did, in my own way. But the excitement, the thrill of something new, was intoxicating. I had spent years with Jason, and I knew him like the back of my hand. But with Ethan, everything was fresh, unpredictable. He was a mystery, and I was hooked. Things with Jason had been going smoothly. Or so it seemed. He had no clue what was going on behind his back. I made sure to keep everything normal when I was home, always attentive, always the loving wife. I didn't want to raise any suspicions. I was careful, almost too careful. Every time Jason asked about my day, I'd give him a vague answer, making sure not to say anything that could lead him to think something was off. But the lies, the little white lies, started piling up. I'd tell him I was going to the gym, or meeting up with a friend when I was really meeting Ethan. Or I'd say I was staying late at work, when in reality, I was curled up on the couch at Ethan's place, laughing, kissing, feeling alive in a way that Jason hadn't made me feel in ages. Every time I was with Ethan, I felt like I was someone else. Someone daring, someone free. With Jason, I felt like I was simply a role to be played, the dutiful wife, the one who took care of everything. But with Ethan, I could be me. I could feel. And for the first time in years, I felt desired. I was wanted. And that feeling was addictive. One Saturday, Jason and I decided to drive out of town. He had to pick up some supplies for a project he was working on, and I thought it would be nice to get out of the house for a bit. We drove about 30 miles to a hardware store, and I was already starting to feel antsy. I knew Ethan had texted me that morning, and I hadn't had the chance to reply. It wasn't like me to ignore him, but I was trying to keep everything under control. I didn't want to risk anything yet. Jason was inside the store, taking his time looking at different materials for the project. I was sitting in the car, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. And then, just as I was zoning out, I saw it. A message from Ethan. Hey, what are you up to? I'm thinking about you. Can we meet later? I paused for a second, reading the message over again. My heart skipped. He was thinking about me. At that moment, I felt something I couldn't quite explain. It was like a wave of excitement, followed by a pang of guilt. But the excitement was stronger. I wanted to see him. I needed to see him. I looked up and saw Jason walking back toward the car. He didn't see the way my fingers hesitated over my phone as I weighed the decision in my head. Everything good? Jason asked, opening the door and getting in the car. Yeah, I said quickly, hiding my phone. Just checking the messages. We pulled out of the parking lot, and I could feel the tension building. Jason started talking about some project at work, but my mind wasn't on him. It wasn't on anything. It was on Ethan. And the more I thought about him, the more desperate I became to see him. As we drove on, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. I'm free now. Where are you? I took a deep breath. I was running out of time. Jason was still talking about something, his voice a low hum in the background. I glanced at the clock. I had 20 minutes, maybe less. I didn't even think about it. The decision was made in a heartbeat. I quickly typed back. Parking lot near the cafe. I'll be there in 10. I felt my chest tighten as I hit send. But I couldn't stop myself. It didn't take long for Jason to pull into the next parking lot, a quiet area where he could go into a store. He was already talking about something else when I realized I had no time left. This was it. The moment where everything could unravel. Jason parked the car and turned to me. "I'll be quick, you can just wait here." For a second, I thought about telling him I wasn't feeling well, about asking him to stay with me. But the thought of that moment with Ethan, the thought of the way he would look at me, the way he would kiss me, took over. "I'll just wait here?" I said quickly, smiling a little too brightly. Jason nodded and got out of the car, heading toward the store. I took a deep breath and immediately grabbed my phone again. Ethan had replied, "I'm waiting. Don't keep me waiting too long." I could feel the rush of adrenaline in my veins. It was now or never. I turned the car on, and, without a second thought, I drove off. I didn't look back. I didn't even think about Jason. As I drove toward Ethan's place, I felt an odd sense of freedom. I was doing it. I was stepping out of the box I had built around myself. This was my escape. This was the thrill I had been missing. And nothing else mattered. The sun was starting to set as I turned down the street where Ethan lived. I parked in front of his building and got out of the car, not even glancing at my phone again. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how deep I was getting into this. All I knew was that I was in it now. As I walked up to the door, I felt my heart race faster. My pulse was thumping in my ears. This wasn't just a coffee date anymore. This wasn't just a few stolen moments. This was everything. I knocked, and the door opened almost immediately. Ethan stood there, a small smirk on his face. "You came," he said softly, and I knew, in that moment, there was no going back. As I sped away from the parking lot, my heart was racing, but it wasn't from fear or guilt. Not yet. No, it was excitement, pure and simple. The thrill of the secret, the forbidden nature of what I was doing. It made my pulse quicken. I told myself it was just a quick trip. I would be back in an hour, maybe less. Jason wouldn't even know anything was wrong. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard as I drove toward Ethan. It had only been 20 minutes since I left Jason in that parking lot. He was probably still inside the store, shopping for materials. I had plenty of time. I didn't even give myself the chance to feel bad. The thought of Jason didn't even cross my mind. I just drove, feeling lighter with every mile between me and him. The reality of my actions hadn't caught up with me yet. The problem, of course, was that Jason wasn't just inside the store. As I turned down the street toward Ethan's apartment, I saw him. I could tell by the way he was walking, the way his head was turned, that he had just come out of the store. My heart skipped a beat and my stomach dropped. No way. But there he was, Jason, standing outside the store, looking around, probably wondering where I was. And then, I saw it. His expression changed from calm to confused, to suddenly frantic. He was walking faster now, his eyes scanning the parking lot, searching for me. I quickly pulled into a side street to avoid being seen. My heart was pounding so loudly in my ears, I could barely think straight. He was looking for me. He was probably starting to realize I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I parked the car around the corner, out of his line of sight, and sat there for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. The excitement had faded, replaced by a creeping anxiety that started gnawing at my stomach. I wanted to turn back, but something stopped me. I couldn't do that. Not after everything that had already happened. I had to see Ethan. I had to. But as I turned to leave the car, I heard Jason's voice, distant but sharp, calling my name. "Samantha. Samantha, where are you?" His voice echoed through the parking lot, growing louder, more desperate. Shit. I looked out of the window, but Jason wasn't close enough to see me yet. He was still searching, still calling my name. But I could see him now, striding toward the cars, looking like he was ready to chase me down if he had to. I knew what I had to do. I had to go. Now, I stepped out of the car, taking one last look at Jason, and then I ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The guilt, the fear. It was all flooding in, but I couldn't stop myself now. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. I got in my car and drove off again, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Jason. "Where the hell are you? I've been looking for you for 20 minutes. Are you okay?" I didn't respond. I couldn't let him drag me back into that life. Not right now. As I neared Ethan's apartment, I checked the time again. I was already over 30 minutes out, but I had no intention of turning back. I couldn't. I needed to see Ethan. The decision had been made. By the time I pulled into the parking lot near his building, my heart was racing. Not just from the excitement, but from the adrenaline. Every moment felt like it was dragging me further away from the life I had once known, and yet it felt so exhilarating, so freeing. Just as I was about to turn off the car, I heard my phone ringing. I saw Jason's name flash across the screen. He was calling me again. My heart skipped a beat, and for a second, I thought about answering. Maybe I could explain myself. Maybe I could just tell him what I was doing and end it right here. But I didn't. I swiped the screen, rejecting the call, and set the phone down in the passenger seat. The buzz of my phone continued as he called again, but I just couldn't bring myself to pick it up. If I did, I knew I'd feel the pull back to him. I couldn't let that happen. Not now. I was already stepping out of the car when I heard my phone buzz again. I ignored it. I walked up to the door of Ethan's apartment, my legs trembling slightly. I could feel the rush of adrenaline coursing through me as I knocked on the door. My heart was in my throat as I waited for him to answer. Ethan opened the door almost immediately, his expression lighting up when he saw me. I felt a jolt of excitement surge through me. He stepped aside, letting me in, and then we were alone. No more pretending, no more lies, no more hiding. I was here, with him, and nothing else mattered. Not Jason. Not the life I had left behind. Ethan closed the door behind me softly, and I could feel his gaze on me, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. "I'm glad you came," he said quietly, his voice full of something darker now, something less innocent. I nodded, unable to say anything. My mind was still racing, still processing everything, but I couldn't stop myself from leaning in when he pulled me close. And as his lips met mine, all the noise in my head, the guilt, the doubt, the fear, faded away, leaving only the intense heat of the moment. It was like everything I had been looking for in my life. This thrill, this freedom, was finally here, wrapped up in him. But even as I kissed him, I could hear Jason's voice in my head, his frantic calls, and the feeling of betrayal gnawing at my insides. It was a faraway echo, something I tried to push down. But it wouldn't go away. The following days felt like a blur, each one moving slower than the last. But they all had one thing in common. My guilt was eating away at me. Ethan and I had spent that night together, but the thrill of it quickly faded. What had felt exciting and liberating in the moment now just felt hollow. I knew I had crossed a line with Jason. I knew that no matter how I tried to justify it, how I told myself Ethan made me feel alive and important, what I did was wrong. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had hurt Jason. But it wasn't just that I'd hurt him. It was the fact that I had done it willingly. For days, I didn't hear from Jason. I tried to tell myself it was because he was busy or he hadn't had time to process everything. I tried to pretend like everything was fine, like this would just blow over and we could go back to normal. But I could feel it, the distance between us. It was palpable, even when he was in the same room. He was quieter than usual. He would glance at me, but there was something different in his eyes. The trust, the warmth, was gone. And then, the inevitable happened. It was a Friday afternoon when I finally heard from Jason. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when it buzzed. It was a text message from him. "We need to talk. Come home right now." I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't the message itself that made my heart race. It was the tone. I knew that tone. He had never spoken to me like that before. Something was wrong. Something was about to happen, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I quickly texted back, trying to sound casual, even though I could feel the panic rising in me. "I'm almost home. What's going on?" He didn't respond right away. But by the time I pulled into the driveway, I saw him standing by the front door, his arms crossed, his face hard and unreadable. My stomach twisted. The guilt was flooding back, but this time, there was no escaping it. I knew what was coming. I knew I had no more excuses left. I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding as I walked toward him. "Jason," I started, but he cut me off. "Don't," he said sharply, his voice cold. I know everything." My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I didn't know how to respond. How could I? He knew. How much did he know? How much had he figured out? I started, but he didn't let me finish. "I saw you," he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger. "I saw you leave the parking lot that day. I saw you drive off. And when I called you, you didn't answer. When I kept calling, you just ignored me. Where the hell did you go, Sam?" I felt like I had been hit with a ton of bricks. The realization that Jason had seen me leave, that he had watched me drive off. It was like a punch in the gut. But it didn't stop there. I followed you, he said, his eyes flashing. I followed you to that guy's place. I saw you walk in. I watched you, Sam. I saw you. I could hear the pain in his voice, the devastation. He was trying so hard to keep it together, but I could see the cracks in his facade. You think I'm stupid? Jason continued, his voice now low, almost dangerous. You think I wouldn't figure it out? You left me. You left me without a word. You lied to my face for months. And you think I wouldn't notice? Tears welled up in my eyes, but I couldn't cry. I didn't deserve to cry. I couldn't find the words to explain myself, to make it better. Jason, I whispered, my voice breaking, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was confused. Confused. He interrupted, his voice rising. You betrayed me. You didn't just make a mistake, Sam. You betrayed everything we had. You threw it all away for a cheap thrill with someone else. I flinched, as if his words had physically struck me. They hurt more than anything I had expected. I had known this was coming, but hearing him say it, was like a sharp blade cutting through me. Do you even understand what you've done? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Do you understand how much you've hurt me? I shook my head, feeling like I was drowning in the weight of everything I had done. I didn't want to hurt you. But I did, and I'm sorry. Jason looked at me, his eyes full of disbelief, of rage, and of something else. Something I couldn't even name. I can't look at you the same way anymore, Sam, he said quietly. I thought I knew you. But now, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you've become. The words hit me like a slap across the face. It wasn't just the affair that had broken us. It was the loss of trust, the loss of who we were to each other. He was grieving not just the betrayal, but the woman he thought he knew, the woman I had pretended to be. I can't do this, he said finally, his voice shaking. I can't forgive you for this. Not now. Not after everything you've done. I need you to leave. I didn't argue. I couldn't. I just nodded, wiping away the tears that had started to fall freely now. Jason turned away, walking into the house without another word. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty doorway. In that instant, I realized something. I had lost everything. The life I had with Jason, the trust we had, the love we once shared. It was all gone. And no matter how much I wanted to make it right, I couldn't undo what I had done. Jason had already made his decision. He was done. He couldn't forgive me. And I couldn't blame him. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Ethan. Is everything okay? I stared at the message for a long time before I finally put the phone down. I had no answers left. I had no more excuses. I had only myself to blame for what I had lost. And as I walked out of that house, knowing that my marriage was over, I couldn't help but wonder, was it worth it? Was the thrill, the excitement, the passion I had sought in Ethan worth losing everything with Jason? The answer was clear no. But it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done.